That one sounded kind of refreshing there at the end. It's as if I had a beverage that I was enjoying, and suddenly it came to that point where you almost have that willful expression of exuberance, almost, dare I say, orgasmic there at the very end of that greetings. How you doing, folks? Hi, how are you? I've been doing the little greeting thing there. I'm going to bring up a guy's name that probably nobody has even heard of, with the exception to a few of you, but Alex Terrible, he's a Russian musician, really just known for doing like the guttural metalcore screams and whatnot of that kind of nature. And it's really something to see him perform and to do what he does, because he's really just is almost otherworldly in terms of how he is able to come across with those growls and whatnot. Really just crazy stuff, but he's a very impressive individual, and I'll say he was my inspiration for doing what I did there today with the old greetings intro that I like to do here on the Rasslin with Redbeard YouTube channel and the Weekly Trim program. So folks, come on in, turn it up. It's a Weekly Trim with yours beardly, the one and only Redbeard. Or at least the only guy who calls himself Redbeard in the next 10 square miles or so. How you doing, folks? Appreciate you tuning in and being a part of this here podcast. Appreciate all your likes, comments, shares, subscriptions, all those things that us YouTubers are supposed to say thank you and beg for and whatnot. That's one of the things, I spend a lot of time on YouTube. And my wife, she makes fun of me for the amount of stuff I watch on YouTube. It's just because I find it very interesting. Because you can find literally anything that you're interested in here on YouTube. And I've done that for a lot of this year, especially since we've been cooped up in quarantine and whatnot. YouTube's been very helpful to me and just being a source of entertainment and what have you. But it's one of those things that's funny because all the YouTubers that I watch, they have some spiel that they bring out about, like, comment, share, subscribe, ring that bell notification icon. That's the new one that came across here recently. It was not just good enough for people to subscribe to a channel. Now suddenly you also had to hit the damn bell. It's like, really? We're having to opt into everything now? Which is fine. I would sooner opt into something than you force me to take whatever you've got and then later on have to figure out how to opt out. But still, it was like, did we need that one extra thing there? Because you're going to see it anyway if you're a YouTube subscriber. You're going to thumb through your subscriptions and you're going to see the new video and you're going to watch it. You don't need to be getting a ding on your phone every time somebody uploads a video, for crying out loud. But I digress. We are where we are. This is the July 27th, 2020 edition of the program, and this is me spouting off at the mouth about being somewhat frustrated with the ins and outs of YouTube. But something else I'm frustrated with is the continuing effects and the continuing saga of COVID-19 and how this thing is really just put a damper on everything, seemingly. We've been talking a lot and encouraging people to do the best they can, despite the fact that this is very annoying. And you don't want to have to do this. I get it, trust me. But we're to a point where we really need to do better at this. And I think most people are getting the picture now. But have you worn your masks today? I want to ask a serious question. Have you worn your masks today? My employer, here a couple of weeks ago, they put out a mandate saying, if you were in a place in the building where you weren't by yourself, or if you weren't in an area that could be controlled in such a way as to limit the spread of things, where you could say, okay, you're 6 feet apart from me and whatnot, that you had to be wearing a mask or some kind of a face covering. And I applaud that. I think that was a good idea. It's something that they really had to do because local government here did not pass any kind of ordinance requiring people to wear them. So even with that being the case, it seems like, in going out to the few places we have here locally in the small town that I'm from, it seems like people have sort of taken it up here finally, and they've realized, you know what, we got to start doing better, otherwise this thing's going to be here forever, and it's going to be something that we have to deal with until Kingdom Come. And so I've seen a lot of people wearing their masks, seen a lot of people doing well, and it's great. It seems like it's starting to really kick over now and say to people, if you ever want to have an impact on this and really start to slow things down in terms of where it might be controllable, you got to do certain things. And wearing a mask is one of them. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that topic because the fact that, at least on the mask thing anyway, it's something we've addressed here, not only with the Weekly Trim podcast, but also, I put out a whole video talking about my criticisms and thoughts on various styles of masks. So, it's something we've talked about before, and I don't want to continue to harp on it. But one more thing I will say, if you're using a reusable mask, have you washed your mask here lately? That's another part of these things here as well, is that there's going to come a point in time where there's a running joke in the ins and outs of independent professional wrestling where guys goof on each other for not having washed their gear. And so you have some dudes who'll show up to an event and they start to take their gear out of their bag and get dressed and whatnot, and it's like just death walking out of a suitcase. Just pure rot almost. And I had the occasion back a long time ago when I was doing some stuff with an independent promotion where there was a guy who he was, and I will never claim to be anything in the realm of independent professional wrestling, but I was doing like some announcing and whatnot for this particular promotion, and we would all, of course, change in the locker room there and get ready for the show. And the guy happened to be changing beside me there, and it was just pure funk, just sweat, BO, taint, nutsack, sweat socks. I mean, everything you could imagine, it was what was coming out of his gear bag. So, I'm sitting within 5 or so feet of this guy, and he was a nice dude. I'm not going to mention him by name, but he was a nice dude, pleasant fellow, but he didn't wash his gear. So I was sort of ribbing on him. I had a can of Axe body spray in my bag, so I literally took my can of Axe out and doused him with it. I just said, here, you need some help, and started spraying him down. And he just sort of sat there and took it, and he's like, what's wrong? I'm like, dude, you need to wash your gear. And in the same case, you need to wash your mask because it's your front line of protection in being exposed to gosh knows what, realistically. We've been convinced here that this thing is potentially spread through clouds of spittle and whatever else may be hanging in the air around where we're walking. So, of course, now, if your mask is the thing that's catching all that and preventing you from inhaling it, then, that needs to be cleaned. And also, that the saying with these masks is, I wear my mask to protect you, you wear your mask to protect me. Meaning that the mask is supposed to protect the others around you by virtue of it limiting the not microbes, but the virus from getting out of your body and, jumping into the air and whatnot. But even with that being the case, in either scenario, you still need to clean your mask. So, if you're using a cotton mask that needs or can be washed regularly, by all means, put it in some warm soapy water or whatever, the care instructions are for your particular mask. Lord knows, some of these things, I think some of the ones that I got from luchamask.com, I think they actually say that you can't really do much in terms of like soaking them in water because of the fact that all the sequins and whatnot that are on there, they say that you kind of have to be very tender in handling those. But, the point still is sanitize them in any way you can because that's part of continuing to improve hygiene and continuing to limit the spread of this thing. So that's just something I want to put out there. in the realm of everything that we've talked about, from washing your hands to wearing a mask to using hand sanitizer, no one's really brought up the idea of, wash your mask. Because a lot of people are still using those little paper masks, the disposable ones. I hate those, to be honest with you, for a number of reasons. Not the least of which is the fact that some of you, I'll go ahead and say assholes, are taking those off and just dropping them on the ground. How uncourteous can you be than that? We're talking about, trying to save the world here potentially and having you guys wear these masks, but then you're going to lay something that is potentially soaked with virulent matter on the ground for someone else to have to pick up. What an a-hole you are. I'll go ahead and say what an asshole you are, really and truly. I already said asshole twice there anyway. I'll go ahead and say it again. You're an asshole. If you're leaving your masks on the ground, and even worse, if you're wearing a mask and other PPE that's disposable and you're leaving it as litter, you're a special kind of idiot and jerk. Just really and truly, pick up your garbage. Don't leave it for someone else to have to be exposed to whatever in the world you've picked up and dealt with. That's just insane. See, that's the kind of thing that should not have to be told. You shouldn't have to tell someone to pick up your garbage, especially not garbage that's got viruses all over it potentially. Come on. People, you have to have a little bit of sense in your brain. Have enough brain cells that if you were to rattle your head around, you might start a little bit of a fire. Have enough there. Don't spend all your time on Call of Duty and sucking down Mike's Hard Lemonade. Come on. I do that enough as is, and I'm still fairly intelligent, but you just got to take some care in these things and some common sense there as well. Because that's just something that was very frustrating to me. I saw some pictures online of parking lots and even on beaches. There were some folks who'd been to like Myrtle Beach and whatnot, and they had shared images of having seen these things on the beach, and it's so ridiculous. You got to take care of each other at this point in time. You got to take care of yourselves as well. Having said all that, are we making a difference yet? It's hard to say. Every day, the media, I'll say this, I don't really watch the news all that much anymore. I catch headlines, I catch snippets of things that I feel like are necessary, that I need to learn about and I need to know of. But then I don't really sit down at like 6:30 and I say, okay, well, we got to watch the news here now. I really don't do that anymore because it's always going to be the same format at this point in time, to where it's coronavirus update and whatever's horrible in the world. We don't have sports. God knows we don't have local sports. So we're not going to have a sports cast really at all ever anymore until something really major starts to happen, which baseball, Major League Baseball, and the NBA are starting to come back around. We've had NASCAR for a little while here, but it's still trying to creep in because there's still that sort of teetering on the edge sensation to these things where it's like if one little thing goes wrong, it's all going to go away again. But with the news, the numbers and whatnot, I don't like the media's handling of a lot of these things because there's presentation to everything. And this is something that I described to a friend of mine the other day. In looking at the way the media has handled these, they look at their graphics packages, for example. And what I mean by that is when the news comes on there and they say, okay, coronavirus update, look at the style of text that they use. Is there anything other than just text on the screen? Is there by chance a large, rather, I'll say, grossly colored and hugely misshapen image of what the virus looks like on a microscopic scale? Is it part of the logos and part of the graphics package? If so, then guess what? They're trying to sensationalize what they're distributing to you in the form of that data. It can't just be, a simple text like Black Helvetica or Impact or whatever, coronavirus update. It's got to be big, giant red letters with flames behind it, and the coronavirus is this mean-looking thing over here, like the Blob from the 1960s movie or whatever that thing was produced. It's sensationalism. Not to say that I can't say that it's entirely bad, because Lord knows they need to do a little bit of that in order to try and convince people that, hey, this is bad, this is terrible in terms of what could potentially be going on around you. But at the same time, just dial it back just a little bit there, guys. Just a little tiny bit, I know you all got your degrees in graphic arts and design and whatnot, but this isn't really the time to be making people any more scared than they already are. So that's just, a point that I've been dying to make. It's some matter of time, because it gnashes at me to think that, okay, people are scared, they're, cooped up in their houses, they're terrified of what might be waiting for them if they even go out to, a store or a restaurant or anything like that. So to have the media, the seeming one source of information that we have in the world, make it a little bit worse by virtue of how they are presenting the news and the data, I mean, that's kind of shitty, to be honest with you. But, it is what it is. They've got to make their numbers somehow, and Lord knows they've got to appease their advertisers. I just wish they didn't have to do it by making people terrified and sending them into frenzies about having to or wanting to buy toilet paper and all that kind of stuff. That's something else that I'm really looking forward to here. It's not, it's not bad enough to hear in the South that we have the coronavirus. Guess what? It's now hurricane season. Yeah. On the day that I'm recording this is a couple days from when I actually published these, but I was looking online earlier, and if you don't follow this guy, you really should, especially if you live in this part of the world, in the Southeast here especially. Mike's weather page, otherwise known as spaghettymodels.com. If you don't follow Mike on social media, you really need to, because he does some tremendous work in following storm systems and giving people a heads up as to what might be lurking out there in the warm waters off the coast of the Atlantic. And right now, there's one that's about 10 days out from where we are now, who it might be something to look at this year. So that might be the first big one that actually sweeps up into the mid-Atlantic. So we're going to see what that thing actually does here, because according to some of the models he had out this morning, it's going to be close. So we'll see what happens there. But, as I said, it's not bad enough we have the virus. We also have to worry about what might happen if hurricanes come around. And Lord knows, if the hurricanes come around, people are going to buy up stuff like they haven't since, March or whatnot, when toilet paper and all the paper products became very scarce. So that's going to happen again, invariably, just because we are where we are. So more fun times abound in the world of COVID-19. Oh, what can I say, folks? Let's listen to some music here and try and change the mood. And we'll be back in a few minutes here to talk about something else other than just coronavirus. Stay tuned, folks. Be back in a few. gang? Thank you for continuing to hang out with us here on the old Weekly Trim podcast as part of the Rasslin Redbeard YouTube channel. Appreciate all your patronage as being part of what we're doing here and continuing to be a very valued aspect of what we're doing here, because without listeners, we don't have much of a actual show. So I do appreciate that. Appreciate you tuning in, being a part of things. And now we want to shift gears. We were talking about, the continuation of how Corona has really affected our daily lives there in the first segment, and kind of going to branch off of that here a little bit and talk about some things that have not only been impacted by the culture change that we're seeing around the entire world these days, but also just how that's impacting the state of something that is very near and dear to my heart, and that is sports. I love sports. I love watching sports. I think most people in some way, shape, or form have a team or a sport in particular that they enjoy, that they like to follow and, be a part of. If that means participating as a fan, going to matches or games, or just, being at home watching consistently. It might be something to where you have your jerseys, you have your hats, all that cool stuff. You might tailgate, whatever your patronage is of a particular team or franchise. I think a lot of people have that as their life, or as part of their life. Some people would have it as their life, and that's kind of dangerous there, because you got some folks who take it a bit too far. And that's, it's all fun and games, but, at the same time, you got to back off at some point and be like, all right, this is still just a game. But that's a discussion for a different time there. But, here within the past couple of months, we've had some real difficult times in terms of society and our culture recognizing that now is the time to, I won't say make things right, but it's definitely time to start looking at where we are and say, okay, is this really what needs to be a part of our society and our culture moving forward? And, there's been a lot of discussion, a lot of various topics, a lot of various things out there, and I'm not going to get on to all of them because Lord knows I don't have enough knowledge or wherewithal to speak on all those things. Sports, I think I got enough to talk a little bit about those. So I'm going to stick with what I feel like I'm comfortable with in talking about the culture change that's happening around professional sports especially. And, a lot of team mascots are being affected right now, and a lot of shift is happening. And most of it is for the good, I'll say. The big one is the Washington NFL football team. And I know I'm gonna stumble over this and say the name at some point in time. I'm gonna try not to, but I know that I'm probably going to stumble up at some point in time and say the name of the team as it has existed for 87 years. So that being the case, let's take a look at that team for a minute here and where they stand. And I'll add to. I made a Facebook post about this. And my general opinion has not changed in terms of how this whole thing feels to me anyway. My general attitude is that, it's not that big of a deal. Realistically, it would suck if you had like a tattoo of that team's logo or something along those lines, because, then you might have to get a cover up now. But at all things total, that's probably the worst thing that you could really think to deal with in terms of this, because guess what? Now you got to go buy some new shirts, some new hats. Is that really that bad? Now, I get it. The team's been around for a long time. That name's been associated with a lot, but it doesn't seem to me to be the worst thing in the world. Because the team's still going to be there. If you had a favorite player on the team, guess what? Unless he got traded, he's still going to be there. Still going to be in the same stadium. Still going to have access to the same roster, coaches, whole 9 yards. So to me, the concept of changing the name or the mascot, whatever you want to say there, is not the worst thing that could happen. If they, the worst thing that could happen to me, if you were a fan of a professional sports franchise in particular, would be for the league to come along and say, okay, well, we're going to move your team here. What? And that's happened to a lot of teams. A lot of players, a lot of fans have had to deal with that. Like the folks in St. Louis, for God's sakes. I mean, they were the Rams, they were the Cardinals. Now they have nothing. Especially now the XFL is gone. I mean, come on. They had a great thing going there with the Battlehawks. I was a big fan of that team. That was actually my XFL team. And when that whole thing went under, I was very disappointed. But, those folks in St. Louis really showed that they wanted football because they came to those games and they made a difference in that XFL franchise. But, if you had a fan base that was suddenly starved for a team, that'd be the worst thing possible to me. The name change thing, that ought to be pretty easy to deal with. You have these people who are they're diehards saying, now I'm going to say the slogan HTTR, which is Hail to the blank. That's whatever. That's fine. You can maybe it'll be something else now that has an R involved with it, and you'll still be able to say HTTR. But and if you as a brief aside here, if you hear rumbling in the background, I'm recording this in my palatial studio, which is not soundproof at all, as we have a thunderstorm here this afternoon. But the whole renaming thing, to me, it seems inconsequential to the fact that you're still going to have a franchise, you're still going to have the same players. The only thing that's changing, the colors are probably not even going to change, is just the thing on the side of the helmet. That's it. That's literally all that's going to change. And I'll say that I have liked some of the logos or some of the proposed ideas and concepts they have for some of the new team names out there. The one I liked in particular was the Washington Red Tails, which is a tribute to the Muskogee Airmen and that squadron of African-American pilots who were really just tremendous soldiers and warriors, served during World War II. I think that would be a great tribute to a actual, a meaningful thing that could be reflected in this day and age. And, that branches off into another part of this whole deal here. And people talking about, well, is that name the current, well, I shouldn't say current, the now former mascot, team name, whatever you want to call it, of the Washington NFL franchise, is that actually offensive to a majority of people of Native American culture? And it depends on who you ask, really. It's very, very telling to me how divisive this is to a lot of people, but not necessarily the people that it really should be up to. It seems as though that a majority of the folks you ask these days, in terms of those folks who are genuinely of Native American culture, say, well, it kind of bothers me, and I can agree with that. I can get on board with that entirely, because it's a name that I think, this is another opinion of mine, I think that the name was selected in a way that it was intended to be not necessarily honorable in tribute to Native American culture, but it was picked because of the fact, it's like you don't ever see a team picking like the name, say, I don't know, the Poughkeepsie Unicorns or something like that. You don't see a team pick a mascot that's cuddly, all right? And for that same reason, you pick a name like what the Washington franchise used because of the fact it was reflective of a warrior spirit. This was something that was supposed to be in some way, adversarial is the wrong word. It was supposed to be, kind of, what's the right term? I can't think of the word. It was something that's supposed to be, kind of intimidating to a way to other teams and whatnot. Now, we're going to play the Washington blank here, and the Green Bay Packers are going to play the Washington NFL franchise. It's supposed to be kind of intimidating. It's supposed to be something you can market in that regard. So you don't want to have it be something that is, timid and whatnot. It needed to be something like that, especially in the era that team was created. Again, this team was named almost 90 years ago. But the legitimate question is, are people of Native American descent really offended by that? And what's the background of that name? It does, it depends on who you ask, but it does seem as though a lot of people who are of Native American descent are a little turned off by that name, and I can totally agree with that. But there's the other side of the argument where it's like, okay, well, should they be? And that's kind of a way of offending people there as well. You're asking people, well, should you really be offended right now? People can be offended whenever they want to be. It's just like freedom of speech. It sort of just happens. But in looking at the history of that name and of the logo and what have you, the logo and the name were actually put together by folks who were of Native American descent. For example, and I'm going through some notes here as I'm reading through all this, but back in, I think it was the early 70s, according to some of the data that I read, the logo for the Washington team was just an R. It didn't have the Native American face on there and whatnot. So before then, it was fairly blank. But there was a gentleman who was part of the Blackfeet Nation who was involved in designing that logo that we've all come to know as NFL fans. So, you have that to where it was part of, the culture to say, okay, well, we went to someone that we wanted to say, okay, here, do it right in designing this logo. And, that was a pretty cool thing in my opinion, because at least they didn't go to some graphic designer and say, hey, we want something that looks, like an intimidating Native American. Okay, well, here you go. And it could have been cartoony and weird and whatnot, but they actually seem to have wanted to do it right. And, since then, has it all been a bed of roses for the Washington NFL franchise? No, not really, especially here recently, because you've got some things going on with that franchise that really are, that's pretty messy. And I'm not going to get into all that because, again, different story for a different time. But, I do think that the franchise name change is going to be a good thing. I think that that's something that will be positive going forward, and it's another thing that can just be a positive reflection of where we are in society these days. So good on those folks for initiating change and for doing something new. I hope they can come up with something that's reflective and honorable of the Washington era, or area, I should say. Again, I like the Red Tails name. There was, I think there was the sort of basic name of Washington Warriors was put out there, and some people were joking about the the team name from the Keanu Reeves movie, The Replacements, where they should name it the Washington Sentinels, which that'd be funny. That'd be only appropriate if they were to do that, but I don't know if they could pick up the naming rights for that. And that's apparently something that's been a challenge in this whole thing. Is there was a person, and again, I don't know the guy's name, but there was a person who evidently decided to buy up a whole bunch of the naming rights for some of the potential mascots that they were thinking of using. So now they're having to either buy these things from this guy or go find something else. I think that's part of the real challenge that they faced here recently as well. Because some of the good ones this guy owns, and he's trying to, I guess, play hardball with them. So kudos to him for, I guess, trying to make some money off of it. But, it is what it is. Because there are some people who are not a big fan of, for example, Dan Snyder, the owner of the team. So any opportunity that they can take it, putting a good one in his side, some folks are really taking advantage of that at this point. So, well, I'm sure they'll figure something out. At this point in time, it's just the Washington NFL franchise or the Washington football team. All these kind of ambiguous terms are using to describe that organization. So I'm sure they'll come up with something here soon. They've got to. It can't go on forever like that. There'll be something that comes around. But it may not be this season. Who knows? There may not even be an NFL season. We just don't know at this point in time. But, the other stuff that has been going around in the whole realm of team names is we've had a couple of new teams come about here within the past week. And it's some that are actually relatively close. We have a MLS franchise. We have a Major League Soccer franchise in the Carolinas now. And it is the Charlotte Football Club. That's the name, the Charlotte Football Club. Some people have said, well, that's the most inane thing ever. You couldn't have thought of anything better than that, other than just the Charlotte Football Club. Now, hold on, just back up here. I am at first, when I saw it, I was like, y'all could have done something a little bit more than that. But then I looked at it and I'm like, you know what? I like it. It grew on me very quickly, because if you look at the logo and the presentation, it is very much indicative and reflective of soccer culture, football culture, European football with a U instead of two O's. It's very reflective of what you see in a lot of the European clubs, and to that degree, even some like, you have Atlanta United, for example, the Atlanta United Football Club. They don't have some wacky mascot attached to their name. It's just a football club, and they can still have a mascot, for crying out loud. It just doesn't have to be part of the name. And like I say, it grew on me very quickly that that was going to be a very cool thing. The colors are really cool. You have this sort of color pattern that is shared amongst some of the professional teams in North Carolina, which you have that sort of baby blue, which is not only indicative of, for example, the Carolina Panthers, but also the UNC Tar Heels. Now the football club is going to use that, and it's kind of the same color scheme as the Panthers in a lot of ways. I don't know that they've added gray to the kit, or silver, whatever color you want to say that is there as part of the Panthers uniforms. I don't know if the football club has added that in there, but I'd be surprised if they didn't, because the motif that they showed off during the announcement this past week for the team name, it did have black, that kind of baby blue, the Carolina blue, and white as part of the logo. So it feels like they're going to be sharing that a lot with Carolina Panthers. And that's cool, because that creates synergy amongst these teams, especially since the Charlotte Football Club is going to be playing at Bank of America Stadium there in Charlotte as well. So you have an opportunity for them to take advantage of, hey, guess what? We're going to have these colors, and you don't have to do a whole lot on game day to change things around to make us feel comfortable. So it's going to be pretty cool, I believe. It's going to be nice to have an MLS franchise that's here close to home, because MLS, they're still not on the same level as Premier League or Champions League even, but they're getting better. The American game is definitely getting better, and it's good to see something like that happening around here. Now, they're not going to start playing until 2022, unfortunately. Still got a couple of years here, but as I said, it's cool to see that this thing is actually happening. And one of the things that I've kind of thought about doing this, I'm not sure if I want to just yet, but they're taking pre-orders. I think that's what they were calling, or some type of deposit on seat reservations. Tickets haven't gone on sale yet, but they are taking reservations for the various levels of seats that are going to be offered around the stadium. So I'm thinking about putting some money down on one of those, at least maybe 2 seats there, because I think it'd be something fun that maybe my son and I could go do. Might not go to all the games, but it would still be something that, as he gets older, he and I could get involved with and kind of pick up from the ground up there. So that'll be something cool to really watch grow out of its infancy into something that'll hopefully be a long-standing franchise here around the Carolina sports. The other side of the coin, in terms of new teams, it's on the other side of the country as well as on the other side of the coin. You have a 32nd team being added to the National Hockey League. And this is pretty cool, because I'm a big hockey fan. And it's going to be in Seattle, and they're going to be called the Seattle Kraken. I love that name. And even more than that, I love the logo. The logo is awesome. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Because this, it's very indicative of the name. It's got the cool little design aspects in there of a mascot, but also of the name itself. Whoever designed the Kraken logo really did an awesome job. It's a fantastic logo, and the name itself is really awesome. And this goes into something I've thought about with. I talked earlier about the XFL franchises, and unfortunately they're gone, at least for now. Maybe it'll come back, who knows. But those teams were all named after things that could in no way, shape, or form offend someone. You had dragons and guardians and this, that, and the other, outlaws or whatever. And with something like the Seattle Kraken, it's like, how can that offend anybody? Guess what? It can't. It's perfect. You don't have to worry about people coming around and saying, okay, well, this was created in such a way that it takes advantage of something that was really done in hate for a long time there. We're talking about a mythological being or a mythological creature. It doesn't exist. There's no way anybody could be having a problem with that, other than just some jerk who doesn't like the logo. Oh, we wanted something else. We didn't want to be a fish. Are you serious? Your town is based around a port, for God's sakes. Accept it. You're going to be a fish. That's it. You can now see. This is the problem. This is where people could be offended because for years, the Detroit Red Wings have had this tradition of like whenever people score hat tricks and whatnot or do special things, people throw squid on the ice. Well, what are the Kraken going to do? Because the Kraken's kind of a squid, so what are they going to do? They're going to start throwing squid on the ice too? Are you going to offend the Red Wings fans? Yeah, that's going to happen. Just enjoy things. If you have a legitimate gripe, make it known. Change these days will probably enact itself as it has with the Washington football franchise. But something like the Kraken, I mean, come on, that's cool. That's a really cool logo. It's a cool name, and I hope that team has a lot of success. I don't know when they're going to come around and start playing, but they as I mentioned, the team name and the logo got announced this past week, and it seems really cool, and like it's going to be a really nice addition to the NHL. So more power to them. But yeah, that's my take on where we are with the culture of sports names and franchise mascots and whatnot these days. I just hope people can continue to learn from where we are and say, hey, let's try and take advantage of some things that aren't going to make people feel like they can't be around a team because they maybe have part of their culture that says, this was a word that was used to describe me and my people in a very negative light for a long time. So let's learn, people. Let's learn and be more proactive and respectful of others around us, especially people like the Native American culture who obviously have dealt with enough as is. They don't need to be worried about a team name, for example. So we'll take a little break here. We'll listen to some tunes and be back in a few to talk about what's going on down in the old town of Orlando. Stay tuned.
I'm tired of being what you want me to be.
Welcome back, gang. Thank you for continuing to tune in and hang out with us here on the old Weekly Trim podcast as part of the Rasslin with Redbeard YouTube channel. We're going to get into a topic here now that if you know me at all personally, or if you've followed the show here, you know that I am a big fan of travel. I am a particularly big fan of travel to one part of the world in particular, that being Central Florida. We like to go to theme parks. We like to go down there and spend some time with old Mick Mouse, as my son likes to call him, old Mickey Mouse. Yeah, we are Disney people. We're not annual pass holders, but we do. We normally would go down a couple times a year. This year we haven't really been at all. Just we've had so much calamity going on that we haven't really had an opportunity to do so, and we're kind of questioning whether or not we'll have an opportunity to do so for the remainder of the year. We're just really not sure where things are going to be, unfortunately. But that being the case, I have taken to living somewhat vicariously. I've been vacationing vicariously and living the theme park life through the eyes of vloggers. Yes, again, a YouTube reference from a YouTuber. And it's a pretty cool thing to be able to do because you can really get a sense for what these folks are experiencing and for what it would be like if you could be there yourself by virtue of what they're presenting on their channels. Now, there's a lot of them. Now, that's one of the things that's really funny about, if you go on YouTube and you look up theme park vlogs, you're going to find about 50,000 of them, because it seems like anybody who has managed to turn a cell phone on themselves and been to Orlando has turned into a theme park vlogger at some point in time. And there are some that are better than others. There are some that are just plain terrible, but there are some that are a lot better than others. You have groups like the Tim Tracker and Adam the Woo. He's been down there for a number of weeks here doing coverage of the theme parks since they're all back open now, especially the Disney parks. You have the WDW couple. Who else is out there that I follow? Mickey Views News is a good one. Braden, he does a good job for a one-man operation there. Who's some other ones? WDW News Today. They're okay, but they kind of get on my nerves for some of the stuff they present in their news format because it winds up being more opinion-based. And I'm not sure, I don't remember what the guy's name is who does their show, but their news show anyway. But he's rubbed me the wrong way a couple times. So the news aspect of it in terms of information they provide is good, but the opinion, the snark and whatnot, I can do without. But again, there's some good ones, there's some bad ones. There's a lot of stuff out there you can pick and choose from. Another one that I like is, I'll mention them here as well because their main star, if you want to call them that, the view from the cheap seats. Kyle over there, we've had a number of conversations on Twitter and whatnot, so I enjoy their show especially as well. But there's a lot of opportunities to live vicariously through these people right now. And that's a cool thing for me because, if it were up to me, my family and I would have already been back down there for a vacation at some point in time this summer. We would have been down there during the spring probably as well, but I got hurt. And then everything went to hell in terms of COVID-19. So we haven't really had that many opportunities this year to go. We were thinking of going in September for my wife's birthday and staying on one of the Universal properties, but that's kind of up in the air now. I doubt that's happening. And we also, we have a reservation for a Disney cruise later this year. Really not sure that's happening because the cruise line industry is still really out to sea, for lack of a better way of putting it, in terms of what they're going to be allowed to do going forward. And that's really sad because that's an industry that we really enjoy, and it's been horribly affected by this whole thing. But again, the vloggers are doing a great job. They're bringing us the experience. And it's been neat to see because they have really had the boots on the ground perspective of the changes that have happened, especially around the Disney parks. The Universal properties have not been as impacted, it doesn't seem, in terms of how they've made modifications to a lot of the rides and whatnot. They've done changes to limit the flow of people in certain areas, but they haven't done wholesale changes to like their queues and to the ride vehicles themselves. And really in all of the Disney ride vehicles, there have been some sort of, well, not all of them, but in a lot of them, there have been some sort of modifications made in order to prevent the spread of disease. Will those ever go away? Probably not. But, it is what it is. The interesting thing in seeing these vlogs and seeing their experiences is really to get a sense of not only for the changes, but also the rules that are in place here now. The main ones are that everybody now has to go through a screening as part of the entry process. And that screening not only includes metal detectors where you just walk through them. There's no longer like a bag check where you put your bag down, open it up, and someone rifles through it. You go through this machine, and it scans everything on you. And if there's something in there that looks interesting, then they pull you to the side. But otherwise, you just walk through the machine and you're done, which is pretty awesome in terms of how long bag check used to take in the past. But they do scan your temperature to make sure that you're not running a fever. And if you're at all like me, and if you're in the Florida sun and heat, sometimes chances are you could look as though you're running a fever when you're actually just hot. And that's one of the things that in looking at the way they've changed things, I've told my wife, I'm not going to be able to get through the temperature screenings because as hot as I get, I don't know. I probably would be fine because they do give you an opportunity to come over to sort of a cool down station and say, okay, all right, well, let's take a moment and see if this still registers at that temperature. And if it does, they won't allow you to enter. But if you come down and get to a more reasonable temperature, then they'll let you in. But it's interesting from the standpoint of all that they've done to limit the crowds, as well as doing those things like the temperature checks and the bag screenings. The crowd control really has put a big dent in the amount of people that are allowed into each park. And what I mean by that is, it used to be to where anybody who had a park ticket or had an annual pass, for the most part, could come to any park any day. And what further complicated that was that some tickets had the park hopper option attached to them, to where someone could go into, say, the Magic Kingdom, and then by 1 o'clock say, oh, well, I want to go to Animal Kingdom. They could take a bus or whatnot over there, and their ticket was still good for that park, even though they had entered another park. That's gone by the wayside now. It may come back at some point in time, but park hopper is gone. And you also have to have a reservation for a park. So let me back up and punt here. If you're an annual pass holder, you still have to have a reservation for the park that you're going into. You also have to obey the blackout dates, because that is something that annual pass holders do have to deal with. They do have blackout dates to where a visitor, who is not an annual pass holder, like a normal ticket holder, gets preference over them in terms of being able to get into the parks. Because they figure if you're an annual pass holder, you're going to have more opportunities to come back than Joe Schmo who just bought a hotel stay and a couple of park tickets and whatnot. So the annual pass holders sort of have to wait their turn. But then to get in as Joe Schmo public, you have to have a reservation at one of the parks, a ticket to that park, and you also have to be staying in one of the resorts. That's, the combination of things there. For the most part, that's not been too much of a challenge for most folks in terms of getting what they need from the reservation system. The thing that's still a challenge is getting on Rise the Resistance. And that's amazing, because you think and Rise the Resistance is the Star Wars ride that's part of Galaxy's Edge in the Disney's Hollywood Studios park. You'd think that by now, it's been more than a year that ride has been open, you'd think that by now that it would be somewhat backed off in terms of the number of people trying to get on it and whatnot, or that they would have come up with a better system to allow people to get on it. But no, there's still conditions to people being able to get on that ride, because now what they've done, again, and this is even drilling further into having a resort stay, having a reservation, having a theme park ticket. Now, once you're in the park, you go on the app, and of course, the app is geolocated, so you can't, be somewhere off-world and be trying to do this, but you have to be in the park, and there are specific times of day where they release boarding group packages that if you're lucky enough to get one of them, you can get on the ride. if the ride doesn't break when your boarding group has been called. So there's just a lot of conditions to being able to get on that ride. And it's amazing that it's not become better and more efficient than it is, but it's just really and truly, it's just crazy. Now, the limitations of that one ride, there's no other ride in the entire world that has been affected by crowd levels and expectations the way that one has left people and has left the entire park for that matter. Because it's, in terms of all the parks, Hollywood Studios is the one that's gotten the most attention because of the fact that it has that ride. People still want to get on that ride. And I can't blame them. I haven't been on it yet, unfortunately. Been on Smuggler's Run a couple times there with the Millennium Falcon, but haven't been able to get on Smuggler's Run. It was not open the last time we were there, which was back last September now. But it's crazy to think that is still going on there. But it's even crazier to think that we've now lost something. We've lost a major thing. It was announced here within the past couple of days that Halloween Horror Nights has been canceled. Yeah, that is really, really insane to think. Because this was going to be the 30th anniversary of Halloween Horror Nights. They had a lot of stuff planned. And a lot of stuff was in construction. Like stuff that was really, in some cases, probably nearing completion. Because we're sitting here, we're almost in August. Halloween Horror Nights, in most cases, if I remember correctly, starts sometimes maybe around mid-September or so. So a lot of those sets and buildings and mazes and costumes and everything else, they had to be nearing completion. So for them to go, and by them I mean Universal Resorts, to say, okay, well, we're just not going to do it. Sorry, we can't. That's a lot of loss in terms of investment in infrastructure and in stuff that, well, hopefully will get used at some point in time, but now it won't this year anyway, because Halloween Horror Nights has been canceled entirely. That's, it's not one of those things where they say, okay, well, we're going to let in just, 1,000 people this night or whatnot. They closed it down. As Negan would say, they shut that shit down. And that's depressing. Because I've never been to Halloween Horror Nights, but I know how much that means to a lot of people. That's a major event, and for it to be taken away because of the potential risks associated with having that many people clustered together around that park in the world we are now with COVID and whatnot, it's really depressing and really disheartening. I'd like to say that they could change their mind and come around and say, hey, well, if the numbers improve, we might still do it. But guess what? Now that they've sort of put the kibosh on the whole thing, the preparation process, I'm sure, has stopped as well. So, it's really disheartening. But the thing of it is, I'm sure that's not going to be the last event that we hear of that gets canceled around not only the theme parks, but just in the world in general, because we've got this situation now where COVID is so virulent in terms of how it affects people that any event that draws a large number of people together is really it's probably in risk of being canceled. And we've already earlier this year Disney had already canceled Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween. That was already done. So the fact that Universal came around and canceled Halloween Horror Nights, people were holding on to such hope because they knew that the mazes were being built. They knew that the houses were under construction. They figured, okay, well, if they put that much into it, they're going to make this thing happen this year. But no, it's not. So you have to ask the question, will we ever get back to ourselves? We're stuck in quarantine right now, folks. Even though we're out, be able to get out and about in the world now, we're still, in a lot of ways, we're still stuck in quarantine. It just, it looks different now. But, the Halloween Horror Nights thing, as I say, really disappointing, really disheartening. It's further proof and further evidence to me that if you want things to come back, like Halloween Horror Nights, like college football, like the NFL, whatever you want to put on there, you got to wear your mask. You got to wash your hands. You got to sanitize. You got to do whatever you got to do these days to have that impact on the world in your own personal way. Because if you don't, it's never going to turn around. It's never going to be what we had before. And that's really, really disappointing. But hopefully it'll come around. Hopefully 2021 they can use some of the same stuff that they had planned. Maybe they can even expand on it. But for the time being, Halloween Horror Nights, not happening. But, it's still, pretty cool to be able to tune into the old YouTube there and see what's going on in our home away from home with the old theme parks down there in Orlando. Some folks, and I'm jumping, I was going to end right there, but I'm going to jump back into a different topic. Some folks are not happy with the way that Disney repainted the castle. Cinderella's castle, that is. They don't like the rose gold and the blue and this and the other. To me, it looks beautiful. They were saying, the colors are so bold, they're so bright. Well, it's going to sit in the Florida sun, you nincompoop. It's going to fade over the course of a couple of years, so it's going to look big and bold right now, but it's going to fade within a couple of years. It's not going to be as bright as it is right now. It's brand new. It's like, a car's paint. It's going to get scuffed occasionally, and it's going to get dulled. Just give it a little bit there to absorb some rain and some, acid rain and whatnot. Unfortunately there, it'll calm down. It's not going to be that same bold color forever. It looks awesome to me, though. I think they did a great thing in choosing the colors that they did, because it really adds a big pop to that castle and making it look like a very bold presentation piece. I like it a lot. So, but yeah, check out some of those vlogs. If you're at all a fan of things along the lines of theme parks and theme park news, the ones that I mentioned there, Mickey Views News, Tim Tracker, View from the Cheap Seats, all those, Adam the Woos, to some extent. He's going to be going back out to California, though, here in short order, so he won't be in Orlando much longer. But still, worthwhile to check out and to see and to experience if you're someone like me who can't actually get to the theme parks yourself. So give them a chance, tune in. So give them a little subscribe there and see what you think. All right, folks, going to take one more break here, and then we'll be back to get to the part of the show that everyone enjoys, especially me, because I'm thirsty right now. We're going to talk about what's Redbeard drinking. Stay tuned.
Yeah. You are my fire, the one desire, belief. When I say I want it that way, but we are two worlds
everybody. This is Redbeard. Coming back from break here, of course, and if I sound as though I'm a little, I won't say disturbed, but if I'm a little bit off the cuff here, or off in the way I sound, it's because I really don't know what I've gotten myself into with this edition of What's Redbeard Drinking, which is how we like to close off the show here. I always, I look for something new and different that I haven't experienced whenever I bring this part of the show around, and whenever I'm prepping for the show. I always want to try and experience something that I haven't had before. And that's become a little bit challenging because it seems like our local purveyor of adult beverages, that being the BP station here in St. Matthews, South Carolina, has gotten a little slim in terms of the pickings, in terms of things that we haven't had already. And so, and looking around the old cooler there, I reached for something that I have no idea what I bought. Just go ahead and say. Because it was one of those things where it's like, okay, well, I don't know what this is. I don't know what to expect out of this. But, it is what it is in terms of this being a new experience and something that we're going to go with here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say what I've got. This is a Bud Light, I think it's Chelada or Chelada. Forgive me for butchering the pronunciation there. Mango made with Clamato. I've said a lot in that few words there. So, again, this is Bud Light Chelada or Chelada, whatever the pronunciation is there. Mango flavor made with Clamato. So let's go through a couple things here. First being the description that's on the can here. Chelada mango. And again, I'm terribly sorry if I'm mispronouncing the word Chelada or Chelada there. I'm a poor white kid. I don't know what that is. I'm sorry. But it's the perfect combination, it's the perfect balance of Clamato's authentic flavor with the refreshment of Bud Light and an extra hint of mango. Enjoy it straight from the can or make it your own. And in further investigating this little beverage that I've got here in front of me, and this is the 25 ounces version of this thing here. What's the ABV on this? 4.2% ABV, so not anything particularly heavy as far as the alcohol content is concerned. But in looking up this thing here, there were two things that I wasn't real sure of. First of all, I know what mango tastes like. I know what Bud Light tastes like. Is that going to be a good combination? Who knows? Bud Light Lime, good. Bud Light Orange, not so good. But the addition of Clamato, which is I've seen the bottles of this substance called Clamato in stores. Wasn't sure what it was. So here I'm looking it up. And, of course, Wikipedia here will tell you straight off the bat, Clamato is a commercial drink made of reconstituted tomato juice, concentrate, and sugar, which is flavored with spices, dried clam broth, and MSG. The name is portmanteau of clam and tomato. Tomato. It is also referred to colloquially as Clamato juice. It is consumed in the United States, Canada, and Mexico. Clams and tomato and mango and Bud Light. Oh, dear God. Why am I having flashbacks to when I went to Mucha Lucha, Atlanta, and thought I was having a nice mango frozen treat there, and it winds up being a mangonada, which, of course, is frozen mango with hot sauce. I did not know at all what I was getting there. And I don't know that I know what I'm getting into here either. But, one other piece of investigation and looking at things here, beeradvocate.com, they have, of course, all kinds of listings on these things. They are calling this about a 3.5 in terms of their scale of 1 to 5, in terms of people that they've, had experienced this. And on the notes for this thing, it's got kind of a different description than what was on the can. The refreshing taste of Bud Light with the richness of a Clamato, tomato cocktail, and mango. This distinctive blend delivers a tropical spin on the classic Chelada flavor. And then it says to best enjoy, gently rotate the chilled can once before pouring. Then pour over ice into a traditional goblet-style glass and garnish with a slice of lime and or mango. I have neither of those. I do have a goblet with ice, however. The tomato is just throwing me in the clam. Oh, God, I don't know what this is going to be. I'm going to do it, though. We're gonna see what this is. It says rotate the can, which I'm not sure if they mean like, let's see, hang on, what's this? Oh, it says do not. That's funny, because on the side of the can here, they apparently have had some people shake this thing thinking, okay, this is going to be for your best bet in how you enjoy this. It says do not shake. Rotate gently to mix. So we're gonna give this thing the old paint spinner here a couple times and just kind of rotate it around. Again, not shaking this, we're just kind of rotating it. I've never had a beer I've had to rotate before. Some wheat beers you do because the fact that they come unfiltered, so that can be, a thing there. But this, oh God, I'm terrified. I'm going to stop rotating this now because I kind of want to get this over with now. All right, we're going to pop the top on this thing and put it to the nose and see what it smells like. Here we go. All right. Oh, God, that's weird. Oh, God. I'm going to go and pour because I think it might separate on you if you don't pour it there. Oh, man. Okay. Here's the thing straight off the bat. It's got kind of the traditional orange, light yellow color of a Bud Light. Nothing really to say there in terms of that. I got a real whiff of something when I first poured this, but I'm going to give it a whiff again from the glass that I'm drinking out of, or the goblet, excuse me, to see if I can get a better sense of what this smells like. All right, well, here's the thing. In getting my nose down into the goblet, this might be part of why they encourage you to drink it from the goblet, but you get the mango definitely registers, and I don't know if I'm just looking for it, but I can smell the tomato, and I swear to God, when I first opened this can, I smelled fish, which is, of course, the clam and the Clamato. I'm terrified right now. I've never been terrified of a beer before, and I'm terrified right now. Oh, God. I want to smell it again just to see if I pick up anything else. No, the tomato's still kind of hanging out in there. All right, screw it. This is Bud Light Chelada Mango made with Clamato. Here we go. Oh, man. Oh. Oh. No, this is wrong. Oh, God. The old brain is trying to process all of this. Okay, for starters, up front, salty tomato juice is the prevailing flavor here. I used to drink tomato juice a good bit as a kid because my grandfather liked tomato juice. And I like tomatoes even now, of course. I like tomato sandwiches, ketchup, whole 9 yards. But that is the prevailing flavor that I'm getting here whenever I first took a drink of this, was tomato. You get a little bit of the mango from an aroma perspective, not in terms of taste. It's very salty, very tomato up front, not, thank God, getting a whole lot of clam. Because I think if the clam came through here more than anything, that would have really been bad. But again, I don't taste beer really at all, which the saltiness of the tomato juice is it's shining through here. But see, as I do that, as I'm kind of smacking my lips, I still have that salty aftertaste in the back of my mouth, but yet I somehow at that moment get the sense of mango being there. It's not sweet. It's very salty, but the mango is somehow there. Oh my God. This is so bizarre. All right, I'm going to try this again just for the sake of you people and having a real documentation of what we're doing here as part of what's Redbeard drinking on the weekly trim. Here we go, one more time here. Oh, God. No. Oh, God. It's not good. I mean, I don't know who would think this is good. Because it's not even, it's not like a Bloody Mary where, and maybe this needs some hot sauce or some Worcestershire or something like that. Maybe the lime would improve this. I don't know for sure if it would or not. I don't have any lime, unfortunately. I have some lemon juice, but I don't think it would do anything to this. Oh, man. This is really bizarre. As I stated before, it's very tomato up front. I don't get the taste of Bud Light at all. Like you couldn't really even tell me that there was alcohol in this. At 4.2% ABV, there's really not that much in here to begin with. But you really could not convince me that there's much in the way of alcohol in here. In just drinking this. The mango is very hidden. The tomato from the Clamato is really up front and present. The saltiness is there. Which, saltiness in beer is not necessarily a bad thing. Because a lot of people would put salt in beer. Or rim your glass with salt. But this is just, the tomato. Oh, God. If it was just Bud Light and mango, I think it would be fine. But the tomato, oh, man alive. There's just something really weird in there about that. The combination does not work. This is a big fail. Ooh, man, I think I paid maybe $2 or $3 for this thing, so I'm not, I would like to say I'm going to finish this, but I'm not going to finish it. I can tell you that right now. This was, it's a learning experience. It's one of those things where I don't remember what cartoon it is. It might be Tots on Disney Junior, but there's a show my son watches where they talk about having your try bites. You have to have your try bites, and then you can say, no thank you. I've had my try bites of the mango Bud Light Chelada Clamato, and I'm going to say no thank you to any more of that particular beverage. Whoo! If you enjoy that one, you're on your own. You can have mine. You go right ahead. I definitely will not be picking that up again. Oh, man. I'm glad I had the experience, though. Glad to have said, hey, we had a Chelada, or at least this version of it. It could be one of those things, too, where I'm sure this is something that can be made at a bar and probably be done more successfully than it is here in this instance. Because with this, with Bud Light being the base of it, I'm sure there's probably some way of making this a little bit better. Maybe by adding some, again, like they described there on Beer Advocate, maybe by putting some fresh lime in it. I'm to a point where if I maybe would put like some Frank's Red Hot or something in there, something to just take the edge off of the tomato flavor. The tomato flavor just does not work in this instance. But I think if you put something else in there, it might be fixable. But as is, this is a no. This is going to get a pass from me. So, yeah. It's not often that we have a beverage on this program that we don't like, but this is one that needs some modification for sure. But, yeah, it is what it is, folks. So there's our take on Bud Light Chelada Mango with Clamato. And that having been said, hope you enjoyed the program this week. We do thank you for tuning in, for being a part of the Rasslin Redbeard YouTube channel and the Weekly Trim program here in particular. If you enjoy what you've had here, folks, please comment, like, share, subscribe, hit that bell notification icon, all that stuff us YouTubers are supposed to say to you. Please take care of each other, wear your damn mask, wash your hands, and I'll meet you further on up the road.